off on Friday night. It was Friday, November 1st. Oh, Friday, November 1st, 2019. I went in for my 38-week checkup. And everything was fine. And they said my blood pressure was high and that I needed to wait 5 minutes, take my blood pressure again. So they did that. My blood pressure was high again. But it was, when I say high, it was not like high. It was 135 over 85. So high for me, but for a lot of people, and certainly for people with hypertension and things like that, not particularly high. But I had never had high blood pressure, didn't have a history of high blood pressure, and they were trying to convince me that I did. And so I was like, no, you know, I don't have gestational hypertension. I've never had hypertension. You know, and the lady was kind of nasty with me. Well, she was like, well, maybe you're just one of those people that gets hypertension, or maybe you have a family history of hypertension. And I was like, lady, why are you trying to make me have hypertension? Right, Randy? She was trying to mess me up. So because I had the 2 high blood pressure readings back to back, they ended up wheeling me over to labor and delivery emergency, which was such a disaster. So frightening. If you're trying to bring down my blood pressure, I don't know why they sent me like a 2-person escort in a wheelchair and like told me I couldn't leave until I went to the emergency room. So we went to labor and delivery emergency. This was probably like 3 in the afternoon on Friday, and they hooked me up to this thing that read my blood pressure every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes it would ding and tell the blood pressure reading, right? So they were supposed to track my blood pressure for 4 hours, from like 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. To determine whether or not I had gestational hypertension. Well, I will never know. Although according to my midwife, I never had gestational hypertension. She told me that after the birth. Because they did not wait 4 hours. I had maybe been on the machine an hour and a half when they came in and they were trying to convince me to induce. And now during my pregnancy, I didn't take anything stronger than a Tylenol. I'm a big proponent of just doing things the natural way. Like, God made your body to birth that baby. So you could birth, like you can do it, absent some outlying health conditions, right? Because there are medical things that might warrant C-sections or other interventions. But we had a very normal, healthy pregnancy, so I wasn't really concerned. So I refused. I refused induction. I refused to stay in a hospital. And so person after person just came in and was like, no, you have to have this baby tonight, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. And so I just asked the young lady who came in, I think she was a nurse, I'm not really sure, she wasn't a midwife, but she was just going on and on about what the OB on call said. And I'm like, I don't even know this person, and he hasn't even been in this room to see me. I feel like if you really wanted to give me some medical advice, you could at least bring yourself in this room and tell me what's going on. But no doctor ever showed up. It was just nurse after nurse like, oh, you really need the induction. We're really recommending inducing to avoid complications later, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but we never finished the test. There's no protein in my urine, by the way. They did a preeclampsia test, didn't have it. So I'm like, what is this really about? But you know, hospitals, they try to get you in and get you out. So I simply asked, and what does it look like if I go home, right? What happens if I just say no? And they were like, well, you would just have to sign out the hospital against medical advice. And they were acting like that was such a huge deal. Don't mistake me. I'm not telling you to ignore medical advice. I'm telling you that you know your body, you know yourself, and you know your baby. If you don't have preeclampsia and you don't have hypertension, don't let somebody talk you into an induction due to hypertension. Just didn't make sense to me. So I was against it. And I did sign out of the hospital against medical advice. Because I had spoken to my doula, I had spoken to my personal midwife. She was not on call at the hospital on that Friday the 1st. She would not come back to the hospital until, oh, I'm so sorry, until Sunday night. And so, She did not feel an induction was warranted. My doula didn't think it was warranted. Mario's mom, that's Joanne, she is a labor and delivery nurse of 40 years. She didn't think it was warranted, so I took myself home. We went home, but before we left the hospital, after I signed out AMA, a midwife who was my midwife's friend came and she swept my membranes, and turns out I was already going into labor. Yes, crazy. These people were trying to induce me, hadn't even checked to see if I was in labor. So I was 3 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced at about 7:30, 8 o'clock on Friday night. And so after she did the membrane sweep, she was like, contractions are gonna start tonight. You're gonna be crampy, and then it's really gonna kick into high gear. And I'm like, oh snap, you know, because this was 38 weeks, so she was 2 weeks early. And we just weren't ready. We were looking at each other like, thought we had a little more time before we became parents. But you know, God works it out like He want to work it out. So we went home on Friday night, and all night Friday I had cramps, like bad period cramps. It wasn't terrible, but I will say it was difficult to sleep. I tossed and I turned, and I was in pain a lot that night. But I wouldn't say that it was active labor until Saturday. Saturday kicked it off, and kicked it off hard. Like, So Saturday we labored here at the house all day long. At about 10, maybe 10:30, 11 a.m. Our doula came over. Mario's mom came over and did our whole setup. So we used what do we have? Riley Roo? Do we need to check our notes? This is my book, Bump to Birthday. I keep all of my notes, my memorabilia, everything from pregnancy through our birth and the first year of Riley's life in here. So I will be flipping through there once I start talking about, once I start talking about what happened in the hospital. So yeah, Saturday we were laboring here in the house. We primarily used those big yoga balls. I had 2 different sizes, and my midwife had given me a packet of like hip opening exercises. So I would sit on the ball and I, you know, do hip circles one way, do hip circles the other way, doing lots of breathing. The doula, her name was Tikva, she's awesome. She brought different massagers. We had what is that stuff, like aromatherapy, essential oils, specifically lavender and peppermint for like nausea and upset, because sometimes you do throw up and get a little nauseous during labor. And then the lavender was like very calming. And then once I got to the hospital, I switched to eucalyptus. Right, Boo? We switched to eucalyptus. So at home, we just did a lot of stretching, a lot of breathing, and Saturday was the longest of days. By 7 p.m. on Saturday, my doula kept saying, it's time to go to the hospital. It's time to go to the hospital, right? It's time for the Riley room. So, and I was like, I don't think so. If y'all can't tell, I'm extremely bossy and I'm not easily swayed by most people and most things. So if I don't feel like it's right, I'm probably not going to do it. So, you know, she was telling me like, oh, we should probably go to the hospital. We should probably go to the hospital on Saturday night. And I was like, no, I don't think it's time. Because even though we had contractions that were close together by 7 p.m., they were also erratic. So they would be like every 2 minutes and then slow down, and I wouldn't have one for 18 minutes. And then I wouldn't have one, you getting sleepy, boo? I wouldn't have one for 36 minutes. Then they rev back up to every 4 minutes, every 3 minutes, like that. So they were not consistent, and I just felt like my midwife had given me instructions, 5-1-2. Contractions every 5 minutes, lasting for 1 minute for 2 hours. And she was like, that's when it's time to go. And so we hadn't gotten there on Saturday night, so I was just like, no, based on, you know, Julie's instructions, it's not time to go. So Saturday night I went to bed at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. I went to bed and I was feeling terrible. I don't think I ate that much. They were kind of forcing me to have healthy snacks. And that's important if you are laboring at home and you're having a long labor. I think my total labor was 41 hours from Friday, because she was born on Sunday at 1:44 in the afternoon. So it was exhausting. So definitely had to drink lots of water and trying to eat like almonds and things just to keep my protein up and my energy up. But by Saturday night, I was really feeling it, y'all. Like really feeling it. Yeah, I was feeling it, boo. So I laid down and I was like, I'm just gonna try to get as much sleep as possible, because even though the contractions were not consistent, they were strong and they were, you know, they were revving up. So I was like, well, this baby's coming tomorrow, so let's try to sleep as much as possible. So went to bed around 10, and I slept okay, better than I did on Friday night, I think, just from the exhaustion of the day, just from having been laboring for the last like 24 hours. I slept until maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I would probably say 3:30, because we got to the hospital and it was 4:18 in the morning, and it's kind of a ways. So I got up at 3:30 and went to the bathroom, and as soon as I stood up, my water broke, and it was everywhere. Not gonna get graphic, but it was just like you see in the movies, just like a huge gush. And it's so funny, because in our birthing class, they were all like, oh, most women, when your water breaks, it's just a trickle. It's just a trickle. Well, we did not have a trickle. So I woke up, I went to the bathroom to try to like dry myself off, get a towel. You know, the hospital bag was already packed. Hey, was already packed in the car. And yeah, so I just went to the bathroom, trying to like pull it together so that I wasn't like dripping all over the carpet. But I had woke up Mario, and I was like, my water broke, you know, we got to go. And I think he thought I was playing, because he was like, oh, okay, and then turned over. So I had to wake him up again, like, nah, boo, my water is broke, it's time to go. Then we got everything together, and then I went downstairs, told the doula she was sleeping on her couch, because she didn't want to leave in case Riley came in the middle of the night. So got Tigba up, and we all got in our respective cars, and headed to the hospital. You getting antsy? You getting antsy? Come on, Boopy. We're almost there. We're almost to the end of the story. So what happened? So that was like 4 o'clock. We got to the hospital at 4:15. Mind you, I am still dripping amniotic fluid. Like, my car front seat was soaked, my clothes were soaked. When I got to the hospital, they had these big giant things that look like a puppy pad. I don't know what you call them, but they put it in the wheelchair and wrapped one around me because I was so damp, and rolled me from the ER to labor and delivery. Yeah, and then we got into our birthing room, and it was exactly the room I wanted. It was exactly the room I wanted, but unfortunately, my midwife was not on call yet. And then these people, I tell you, whew, this hospital, they were not like on board with my birthing plan. So like, my midwife and I had agreed that I could do intermittent monitoring for myself and the baby, so that I could walk around, use the peanut ball. I chose a birthing room that had a tub in it. I wanted to get in the tub and relax. When we got to that room, those people were like, nah, you gotta be hooked up to this monitor. You can't get out the bed. You can't walk around. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I'm like, are you for real? The only reason we chose this hospital was so that we could have a natural experience. And movement is one of the best things for birth, to help offset the contractions, to walk around, to squat, to roll your hips, you know, to do all of the things. Oh, okay. To do all the things that we had been preparing to do, and they were basically like, you can do none of that. So it was a huge disappointment, but not a shocker, because hospitals in general are trash. If I ever have another baby, I will go to a birthing center that my midwife is associated with, And I think that we would have way, way, way better results. That's just me. Our birth was not bad, and this is not knocking the hospital. As a matter of fact, our nurse, like our labor and delivery nurse, I don't want to state her name just for privacy, she is amazing. She did everything that she could to make it so that we could have a good experience. So she brought a peanut ball that was on wheels up next to the monitor that they had me strapped to, so that I could get out of bed and do my hip rolls or sit on the ball without having to come undone from the what you call it, the monitor, right? So she just went out of her way to give us as much freedom as we wanted, within the confines of wearing the monitor. Obviously, she was not like the head person in charge, so she couldn't take me off the monitor, but she did do everything that she possibly could to accommodate me, and I'm super duper grateful. Our whole labor and delivery team was fantastic, and I understand they can't violate hospital policy just because I have a birth plan, so that's no shade to any of them. As a matter of fact, like I said, our nurse was just the best. We sent thank you cards. Yeah, we did. We sent thank you cards and gifts to our labor and delivery team from the hospital, because they were so kind in trying to make it what I wanted it to be, even though the hospital wasn't necessarily for it. So that's a positive. So fast forward, contractions are picking up, but they're still not like regular, like every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, every 4 minutes. They just come when they want to, and so, you know, they're trying to bully me again, right? So the lady comes in, and this is the midwife that's on call. She comes in and she's like, well, if you're not progressing, we're gonna have to give you Pitocin. Ma'am, have you checked to see if I'm progressing? Of course I was progressing. When I got to the hospital, sorry, forgot to add, when I got to the hospital, I was 6 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced when I got there. You know, and they're just like, well, your contractions are still not regular, blah, 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 you're not progressing, yada, yada, yada. Again, they're telling me all this BS, and no one has looked at my cervix. So she says all this, and then they checked me, and I am 8 centimeters dilated, 100% effaced. I would say maybe that was at 10 in the morning, 10, 11 in the morning. And so we were definitely progressing because everything was getting more intense. By the time we got to 8 centimeters and 100% effaced, the pain was unreal. It was unreal. I would say up until that point, labor was not that bad. Contractions, not that bad. But whew, once the cervix was all the way thinned out and all the way gone, her head, this big head, although thankfully not this big, was going underneath my pelvic bone. And that was horrible. Just horrible. I was begging for the drugs. Like begging, like please just get the baby out, give me some narcotics, give me a C-section. At this point I was over it. It had been nearly 2 days. It was Sunday morning and I had just had my fill. It was just not gonna, it wasn't gonna work. I couldn't take it no more. And so the midwife came in, and I actually signed the paperwork to get an epidural. But the whole team there, despite them not like following the birth plan to the T, they knew that I had been supernatural the whole pregnancy and that I really, really wanted a natural childbirth. And so they were like, okay. And they kept saying okay, but nobody sent the anesthesiologist to see me, right? So the time is ticking, and I'm like, y'all gonna give me these drugs? And the lady was like, I just want you to bear down. Just bear down, not push, but bear down every time you have a contraction, and that's gonna help you. And then you tell me if you still want the drugs. And she was like, because I want you to do it how you want to do it. And up until now, everything has been natural. And I was like, no, you're right. And Mario was great. He was like the most amazing birth partner. From home to the hospital. At home, he was on the floor with me, counting, breathing, doing all the exercises, making it happen. And in the hospital, he was just whatever I needed. Need some ice, need some water, need this, need that, you know, he was on it. So we agreed that I would not get the epidural. I was not going to get any drugs. Mind you, my hospital does still will do epidural up until it's time to push. A lot of hospitals do have a cutoff where they will stop and say, okay, you're past the point, we're not going to give you epidural. Not this place. So you know, I'm grateful that they really reminded me like how I wanted to do it. Like, don't let the pain get to you. It's almost time to push. And that's when she said, if you're feeling like it's time for an epidural, then it's time to push this baby out. And I had, so from 8 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced to 10 centimeters dilated, I was bearing down on through every contraction, just really pushing down and breathing and counting through every contraction. So by the time they went to check me, we could see her hair. Like, I rolled over, I was laboring on my side with the peanut ball in between my knees. And so when I lay on my back for the midwife to take a look, we could see this big old head of hair. She was born with quite a bit of hair. And so they were just like, okay, let's push this baby out. She is ready to go. And so she came out in 4 pushes. But it's crazy because my contractions never got regular. They were never like every 5 minutes or every 1 minute or whatever. They just never did that. Even during pushing, I had to use a breast pump for nipple stimulation to help bring the next contraction on a little bit quicker so that I could push it. Yeah, we had to work it out, didn't we? So that I could push her out effectively. But she came right out in 4 pushes. I didn't have any tearing or muscle damage. I did have 1 stitch on the outside for like a friction burn. We have a mirror right here. She is like looking at herself, y'all. You getting mad? Okay, let's get us a toy. Come on. Let's get us a toy. Sorry about that, y'all. I was hoping that we would get back to our birth story the other day, but it is actually 2 days later because I just did not have time. And if you have a little baby and you're working during the quarantine, then I know, oh, excuse you, I know you know that time is a scarce commodity. Anywho, wanted to finish up telling you kind of our story. Yeah, our story. After I pushed out Riley, right? So I think I left off, we had done 4 pushes and she was out. Okay, got 1 stitch on the outside, nothing major. They cleaned my baby up and she latched like a champ. And I'm so grateful for that. We did our golden hour, right? Skin to skin, nursing for an hour after she was born. We were actually together for 6 hours after birth. So, we moved from the labor and delivery room to our recovery room and kind of got settled in. And then Mario had to leave because he started a new job. Yeah, he did. He started a new job that next day. So she was born at what, almost 2 o'clock, 1:44. So 6 hours later, yeah, I know, at almost 8 o'clock that night, they come in and tell me that her she's Coombs positive +4. And that her bilirubin level was 5. And so I wasn't really familiar with the Coombs positive, but I did know, you know, that elevated bilirubin levels lead to jaundice. So I was concerned. So at first they tell me, okay, we're going to bring in blue blanket for her to lay on here in the room with you. And then a nurse comes back and she's like, no, we have to take her to the NICU. She needs triple blue light therapy. So, out of nowhere, really, they took my sweet baby to the NICU, and I'm freaking out, right? I don't know what's going on. And so they come in and tell me that she has what's called ABO blood type incompatibility. And what that means is that me and Mario had different blood types. I have type O, which is recessive, and he has type A. And my blood that was still in her body that had crossed through the umbilical cord was making her sick. So I didn't know that was a thing. So maybe you and your partner, just a suggestion, check your blood types, get checked for all of that stuff. Apparently it's a relatively common birth complication, but I was totally unfamiliar with it. I didn't know my own blood type, let alone Mario's blood type, to have, you know, kind of prepped for this in advance. So she stayed in the NICU for 6 days, and they were the longest 6 days of my life. Man, the first day was rough. So they took her and they told me I couldn't come visit for an hour. So I took a shower, put on makeup, and I went down with my cousin Jennifer. And I saw my sweet little baby in that box with all of those tubes. And somehow they had bruised up her top lip, putting the tube in her nose. And I just cried, y'all. I just stood by her bedside and I cried for my sweet baby. Because you know in those boxes you can only stick your arms in up to the elbows. So I held her little hands and I just... I was feeling it because my whole world was like trapped in this little blue box. It was rough. And we really didn't see any change. And every day, the first couple of days, we were like, oh, well, we just want to keep the levels constant. Just want to keep it constant. And so we were glad that it stayed 5 and it stayed 5. But I was wondering, like, why isn't it coming down? She was on an IV at first, and then they had asked me if we could give her formula because... you know, they knew I was trying to breastfeed, but my milk didn't really come in until the 3rd day, and she didn't get like breast milk all day long until the 4th day of life. So those first 3 days, I was like, forget it. You gotta do what's best for Riley. Yeah, I want an exclusively breastfed baby, but I want a healthy baby. I want, you know, a safe baby, and I want my baby home. So they gave her formula on Monday. She was born on Sunday, so they gave her formula Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But Wednesday, by the grace of God, right, my milk finally came in. First in little drip drops, yeah, that they let me feed to her with a Q-tip. So don't be discouraged, mamas, if you are at the hospital and you are pumping and ain't nothing coming out at all. Just stick with it. It took me almost 36 hours around the clock, pumping every 2 hours day and night for this milk to come in. But this is a 15-pound exclusively breastfed baby. She's fine, right? Well, she's no longer exclusively breastfed. She does eat fruits and vegetables these days, but maybe 2 ounces a day. So the primary source of her nutrients comes from breast milk, and I'm really excited and proud about that. But the early days were rough, and you definitely have to stick with it if you're going to have a breastfed baby. So all that to say, once we got breastfeeding underway, right, her numbers started improving. The very next day, bilirubin levels were dropping, and they took her off of the blue light on the 4th day. So it was just wonderful how our bodies can really provide what their little bodies need. So day 4, they turned off the lights, and I was like, oh, they're taking my baby home. No. I thought I could take my baby home, and they were like, no, ma'am. Her sodium levels were still a little high. But they weren't going to treat her for it. They just wanted to observe it. They let me know that typically with consistent eating and wet diapers that the sodium levels would generally come down. And so we waited and waited, and every day it was like 128. They were looking for less than 125, and so it was so close, and we were getting frustrated. So day 5, her sodium, when the doctors made their rounds, was 125, and we just knew. They had us take a little class about car seat safety. They had us do the exit checklist. I just knew we were going home that night. And then the doctor was like, no, we want to observe her for 24 hours just to make sure that the sodium stays down. So we stayed there 24 hours more, and that next morning we were discharged at about 10:30. And the whole thing, overall, I don't have any complaints about her birth, but the NICU was kind of terrifying, and I just want to encourage anybody out there, if your baby's in the NICU, you know, things do get better. These little angels, they get stronger. They are so tough. And just keep it all in perspective. Jaundice and bilirubin levels, elevated bilirubin levels, I should say, are relatively common, and most of the time don't lead to anything, any additional complications. Once your baby's under that blue light, properly hydrated, most of the time they can get those levels down. My girlfriend, her son was under the blue light for a while after he was born, and I believe it is particularly common in African American and Asian babies, but I might be wrong. So I'm gonna post a link about elevated bilirubin levels in the comments below. But that's kind of our story. We labored at home. It took ages and ages, 41 hours from start to finish to bring this baby into the world. And she is the most worthwhile thing that I have ever done, truthfully, including, you know, all of my personal achievements. Motherhood is magic, you know. And I'm just so grateful that she brought that magic into my life. So I hope our story was inspirational. If you have questions about natural birth, I'll probably make a follow-up video with all of our tips and tricks for laboring at home. If you plan to labor at home for a nice long time, or if you're going to go to a birthing center that'll allow you some of that freedom of motion that I talked about earlier, then I'll have some tips for you later on. So thank you for sticking with us through this, and I ask that you would like this video, share it with an expecting mom, and subscribe for more and me of this gem right here.